Welcome to the Expressive Bird Masterclass lesson number 1. In this lesson, we'll animate the main object in our composition, the bird. And let's get to the project itself. Find the comp, named 3 Bird and Trees, and open it. Open the bird comp. In this lesson, we'll be working in this composition. Let's quickly go over what I've prepared for you and what we have to work with. Our bird, a fruit which the bird will fly to and pick up. The bird's big wing will need it to animate the bird flying. An additional wing for dynamic turns and sharp movements of the bird. Determine the location of the bird. The bird's tweeting will animate that later. And the source file of the illustration to see what our bird will look like in the whole composition. This lesson will be the most extensive and important in this masterclass. Therefore, to make it easier for you to navigate, I divided the bird animation into 5 logical parts. The bird flying in, the bird tweeting, the bird turning to the fruit, the bird picking the fruit, the bird flying away. Let's get to part 1. Let's animate the bird flying in. Let's set the main positions of the bird that we've got planned. Turn on the illustration source layer. Select the layer with the bird. Set a position keyframe and place the bird where the beginning of its flight will be. I want it to fly out of the branches of the trees on the left. Let's go a little further in the comp and move the bird here. Move 5 more frames and place the bird to the left. And another 5 frames, move it onto the liana. Please note that I moved her closer to the fruit because I know that I wanted to turn around its head. And I want that to happen not too far away from the fruit. Let's see what we got. Okay, that's not perfect since the bird is moving in straight lines, whereas more natural movements tend to follow a curved path, and the animation should follow that as well. Therefore, let's make the bird's path curved. In order to move only one Bezier handle, drag it holding down the Alt key. Let's play back what we did. The trajectory is there, but it still doesn't look natural. We need to adjust the speed of the flight. To do this, we need to understand 2 animation principles: timing and spacing. Timing is how long things are happening. It's the number of frames between the keyframes. If I move these keyframes to the right, then the movement between keyframes 1 and 2 will slow down. Spacing is the nature of the movement. It can speed up or down to make movement smoother. In After Effects, that's what easing does. Let's easy ease the keyframes first. Select them, press F9 and go to the graph editor. One of the rules of animation is to soften the beginning and the end of the movement. The movements of the human body and of most other objects take time to pick up the speed and then to stop. For this exact reason, the animation looks more realistic if it contains more drawings at the beginning and the end of the action emphasizing the main positions, and fewer drawings in the middle of the movement. I want the bird to fly in as sharp as possible and then slow down at the end, so we should move the handles to the left. Then I want a smooth speed up and a smooth slow down, so we should move the handles towards the center. And for the landing, let's shift the graph to the right to let the bird gain some speed. Let's play the animation. Everything happens way too quickly, and we can't even see the changes in velocity. Let's adjust the timing. Already better, but there is no follow-through action. The bird can't just stop sharply in one moment, it looks unnatural. Some parts of its body should still continue to move by inertia for some time, even after it stops. Furthermore, the bird might also jump a couple of times slightly to suppress the energy that continues to push it forward. That's also one of the principles of Disney animation. Let's apply this to our bird. Add 2 more keyframes, make the arc movement trajectory, and adjust the easing. This action takes some time, so I'll speed up this part. Here's what we got. So we sketched out the main dynamics of the bird's movement. Now it's time to set the main poses. Let's adjust the second key pose. Let's animate the rotation along a path. Copy the easing from the position and apply it to the rotation. Duplicate the layer. We need to mirror the bird and make it turn with its body around the head. Let's get to it. Select the scale property. Let's make it -100. We mirrored the bird. Now let's adjust the bird to the position we have in mind. Let's set another position. Duplicate the layer with a pose. Select the scale property. Switch the bird back to the previous position. Turn off the main layer for a bit. Adjust it again according to the head. And finally, let's set the final position. Let's duplicate the third pose and set the rotation to 0. Now, remove keyframes on each pose. For the second, these. For the third, these. And for the fourth, these. And turn off the bird's legs on the second and third pose because they shouldn't be visible during the flying parts. The key poses are ready. Let's clean up the comp a bit. Transfer the layers with the poses onto the main layers. Before we begin the animation, let's break the bird into 3 different parts: the body, the tail, and the legs. I'm going to animate the tail separately because I want to use the bend and bounce expression for inertia, which is only possible on a separate layer, and it will be more convenient to control the legs manually. Duplicate the bird layer 3 times. Turn off the top 2 layers. Rename the layer Body. Go into it and remove the tail and the legs, leaving only the bird's head and body. Do the same for the tail. Go inside and delete all unnecessary layers except the tail. Next, remove the keyframes. Parent the tail to the body layer and turn it off. And finally the legs. Rename the layer, go inside it, and disable everything except the legs. Delete the keyframes and drag them to the landing spot. Then let's turn it off. Done. Let's get to the animation. Let's go to a couple frames before the key pose. First, let's animate the body. Turn off the head layer. Set a keyframe on the path property. Select body shape and press Y and move the anchor point here. Set a rotation keyframe. Select the layer and move to the desired frame. Set the turn approximately. And edit the path. Copy the easing and apply it to the rotation and the path properties. Repeat the same with the head. Disable the layers we don't need right now. Set a keyframe on the path property, set the anchor point, set a rotation keyframe, and move on to the desired frame, and turn on the body to see what happens. Start rotating the head. Set a keyframe on the position to make it more precise. Set the keyframes and edit the paths. Let's apply the easing again, which we copied earlier from the position of the bird. Let's animate the beak. If you can't see the anchor point, click the center of the anchor point panel in Motion Tools script. Then the anchor point will be placed directly in the shape center. Then press Y and place the anchor point where we need it to be. Set keyframes on the scale, the position, and the rotation, and customize it to the key pose. Set the scale to -100, and using the position and the rotation we can more accurately set the position. The eye is in the right place. Adjust the easing. Let's take a look. Well, I think that the transition is too sharp. We need it to be smoother. Let's space out the keyframes. Select the left row and move it by a couple of frames. Already a little better. Now you should understand how to animate the transition from one pose to another. In the same way, let's go further from second to third and from third to fourth. Turn on the third pose and move to the keyframe. My position shifted a bit, but that's okay. Our reference is the eye, so let's just bring the bird closer. Now let's repeat the same actions. Let's start with the body. Animate the path and the rotation, and copy the keyframes from the previous pose's path. Let's correct the path at this moment. Done. Now let's animate the head and the beak. Go to the landing. We can see that the bird has shifted a little. That's okay. Let's select the last 3 keyframes and place the bird in the right position. There's something wrong with the transition. Let's clean it up. Copy the easing. Select the keyframes. Copy them so the values on this interval won't change, which will allow the bird to stay in the correct position longer. The easing is too harsh. Press F9. We want it to move smoother. Select the keyframes, shift them to the left by a couple of frames. Add a slowdown at the end. That seems okay. Let's start animating the legs. Turn on the legs layer. Put it in the correct position. Parent them to the body layer. Let's start animating from the first touch point with the liana. Find it on the timeline, turn off our pose, and cut the layer with legs in the right spot. Set the keyframes and the path property of the two legs. Let's start the animation. I'll speed it up so you don't fall asleep. The main principle that I used when animating the legs is to animate it all relative to the body. Try to keep their length, and at the time of the takeoff, let's keep the feet touching the ground. The main movement is complete. Before animating secondary motions, the wings, the tail, the beak, the head, the trails, let's try to improve this movement and ease our little bird and make it sharper. The transition between the second and the third poses seems a little slow. First, let's fix the easing, set it to 75. And press Enter. And this handle will bring back to where it was. Let's also increase the arc on the position. And make this transition faster. Shift the keyframes to the left by 2 frames. Already better. Let's try to speed up the beginning. Select the desired keyframes and move them to the left by 1 frame. Yeah, I like this way better. Move the legs. I also want to make the landing sharper. Shift 2 frames. Let's see. That's a little too harsh, and if we move it only 1 frame... Yeah, that's it. Move the legs layer on the timeline, like this, and done. We finished animating the main movement of the bird. I hope you got it to be even better than mine. Next, we'll move on to the secondary motions. We'll add the wings, the tail, the beak, and the trails. Let's turn on the wing layer. Go to the next frame to have the bird in plain view. Turn on the wing layer and drag the wing onto the bird. Let's go inside the shape and set a keyframe on rotation. Let's move 2 frames forward and change the rotation. Select the keyframes and press F9. Let's parent the wing layer to the body layer. Now check. Correct the values to make the wing more noticeable. Now we need to loop the animation of the wing. Type in loop out ping pong expression. Move the keyframes to the beginning. Let's have a look. Now let's make the wings move faster and reduce the number of frames to 1. You can see that there's a problem here because the bird turns while the wing remains where it was. Let's make the wings switch in 1 frame. Find the right place. Mirror the wing and change the scale to -165. Let's make it in one frame. Change rotation value. Let's mirror the wing for the next turn as well. Set the right values. Now let's mirror the wing back, copying the first key. Then let's correct rotation a bit. And animate position so that the wing is in its place. Let's check. Find the moment the bird lands and cut the wing layer. Let's see what we've got. Not bad. Let's move on to animating the tail. Turn on the tail layer. Move anchor point to the base of the tail. Create keyframes for position and rotation. Create a keyframe for path. Let's animate the tail's turn. To make the result more precise, let's turn on the static pose we have prepared in advance. Animate the path. As the position doesn't change later on, copy the keyframes. Let's move on and animate the tail. Copy easing from position and apply it to all the tail's properties. Now let's adjust the arches in position. Remove the extra bezier handles. Repeat it here as well. Let's have a look. The tail moves correctly, but it looks quite rigid. Let's add some flexibility to it and animate the path. But before we do that, let's check the movement we already have once again. I would like to make the first transition smoother. Let's select the left keyframes column and move the keyframes a couple of frames to the left. We'll use the standard easing by pressing F9. I like it more now. Now let's draw the arch path along which the tail will move. Done. Let's move to path animation. Move the keyframe to the first frame. We will make the tail stretch on the second frame. Squash and stretch are one of the main principles of animation. They help to add flexibility and weight to animated objects. We will use this principle in practice quite often. So let's bend the tail a bit in the direction of movement and stretch it a bit. Next, animate it along the arch. Let's bend the tail in the key position as well, creating an overlap. Move on and increase the overlap. And on this transition, I'd like to create a trail for the tail to make the rapid movement more noticeable. Great. Let's also bend the tail at this moment and have a look at the result. Let's make a few more changes. Add stretch on this frame. And then select the keyframe with a straight tail and paste it a bit further. It looks fine when flying, but it lacks overlaps while landing and the tail looks rigid. Let's fix it. We will animate the overlaps on the tail with the help of CC Bend effect. To do that, let's select and paste the keyframe with a straight tail, and create the bend with the help of CC Bend effect. Find CC Bend and apply it to the tail layer. Holding down Alt, press Start and End and type in expression to comp value. Move Start and End. Set the keyframe at Bend property. There's one problem. Bend cuts the tail at some points of animation, and that isn't something that we need here. There's a great solution to this problem. Go to Effects, find CC Bended, go to Compositing options. You can see the Effect Opacity property here. This property is responsible for the effect's visibility. Now, if we move to the required moment and animate it from 0 to 100 in one frame, for instance, we'll see that the effect won't be applied before we need it to. Do you know what's really cool about it? This works for all the effects. Let's continue. Let's animate the bend. Now animate the tail's overlaps. Seems quite good. Let's use elastic expression to make the tail keep on swinging for some time when the bird has stopped moving. Now select all the keyframes and press F9. Make the last keyframe linear so that the speed is more than 0 to make the elastic expression work. Let's check. Not bad. We just need to offset the head in the moment of landing and add trails at the very start of the movement. Let's animate the head. Find the head layer, set the anchor point, create keyframes on rotation and position, and let's animate the head. Done. Let's animate the beak. Find the beak layer and create the keyframe on path property. Animate two different positions, the beak closed and the beak open. You can see that at some points the beak's position doesn't fit tightly. Select the keyframes, right-click, and click Keyframe Interpolation. Change Spatial Interpolation to Linear to get rid of extra loops along the movement trajectory. Let's copy these keyframes and paste them into a couple more places. Let's have a look. Not bad. Hope you have achieved an even better result. However, there's a problem. At the very start of the movement, the bird can't be really seen in the very beginning, and we only notice it on the 4th or the 5th frame, as if it appears out of nowhere. This problem can be solved by trails. A trail can draw the rapid movement trajectory and facilitate reading it. So let's switch off the layers we don't need. Move to the 2nd frame and stretch the bird's body in the direction of movement. Go to the 4th frame and copy the original body. Then go 1 frame back and make the trail smaller. Not bad. Let's cut the beginning of the tail layer so that it appears on the 3rd frame. Hooray! We have finished the first stage of animating the bird. I hope you have learned the main animation techniques we have used. I suggest you rest a bit, then get back to the animation you've created and adjust it a bit if necessary. After that, you can move on to the next stage, at which we will